So do you feel like it's different raising biological kids as opposed to your child who was adopted?
That's a good question. It's kind of hard to answer. She's still so young. My boys are older. And she's 2.5. And so I'm sure, especially as she gets older and we can have more conversations about adoption, that it will be a little bit different. But at the same time, there's many times that I forget that she is adopted. I mean, you raise your children as you raise your children, your parents, and we all make mistakes, obviously, and we learn as we go. But, adoption is part of our journey as a family. And so I think it impacts the way that I raise my other children as well. And there's been definitely some good lessons and good experiences that they've been able to have that they wouldn't have had if we wouldn't have gone through this experience. So, yeah, I kind of feel like I'm just a rookie at it. We'll see as she gets older, but I think it needs to become part of our daily lives. I mean, it's part of who we are. And so I think we'll have those open conversations, and that information's out there. I didn't ever want her to feel like she had somewhat of an identity crisis, like where do I fit into all this and in this family. So hopefully just being open and communicating. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Well, I was at an adoption conference once, and I was listening to some speaker, and she was talking about some of the things that you need to just be aware of with kids that are adopted. And I was just thinking, but my kids were really little at the time, and I was just thinking, I don't really need to worry about that. And I just remember having this thought that, no, you need to stop pretending like your kids weren't adopted, because that is part of their story, and that is part of who they are. And so you need to be aware of things that are going to come up in their lives that maybe wouldn't come up in their lives if they hadn't been adopted. So things like kids asking them, well, that's not your real mom or whatever. So thinking through those things and talking about them, and just like if my kid had some sort of chronic illness and we had to talk about what was going on with that chronic illness, we'd have to do things differently a little bit. And so it's just thinking through those things and empowering our kids to be who they are and be comfortable with what they are.
I think it's like when people say, when are you going to tell them that they were adopted?
Yeah.
And how do you do that? And it's not, we don't have a sit-down conversation about it. We have a bunch of children's books on it, and we read those. And but that's, it's a daily conversation that we have about adoption, and that Brianna's your birth mom and I am your mom too, and we share that role, and that's okay. And it's more people to love you. It's not a bad thing to have more people in your life that love you and care about you and want the best for you.
I think day to day, every day, like I'm like telling my kid what to do. I don't like look at him and I think I gotta ask him differently because he's adopted. Or anything.
Right.
But I do need to ask him differently because he's different than his brother, and he's different than his other brother.
Sure.
And his maybe parts of his adoption story like dictate that a little bit. And I work with a lot of, as an adoption worker, I work with a lot of families in a lot of different situations, international adoption and stuff like that. And their background, some of these children, that are adopted internationally or maybe from foster care, their background is vastly different than even my children who were adopted at infancy. And so you do have to think, like you were saying, you have to think about certain things. You have to be prepared for certain questions. You have to realize that, that your child may feel a certain way at certain times, and be open to not just kind of dismiss that. And I think that's where the difference lies. But the similarity is that, you're these children's parents.
Right.
You still parent them pretty much like you would any other child. So.